Hi, good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here. Pleasure. Happy Wednesday. And let's just get started. So we have pretty much everyone here. Let me tilt this up a little bit. For those who don't know, I'm Senator Brisport from Brooklyn. And I'm honored to be here today with leading disability rights advocates, my colleagues, Assemblymember Epstein, Assemblymember Simon, Senator John Liu, to introduce our bill. We call it Andre's Law. The bill is named in honor of Andre McCollins, a survivor of aversive conditioning, which is the practice of repeatedly and intentionally inducing pain or discomfort in an attempt to alter a person's behavior. Andre was diagnosed with a neurodevelopmental disorder and sent to an out-of-state DOE-approved facility as a teenager, the Judge Rottenberg Center. He was subjected to aversive conditioning there until he was ultimately hospitalized after being tied to a board and electroshocked 31 times over 7 hours. New York State continues to send children to this same facility, the Judge Rottenberg Center. Our nation has found excuses for far too long to lock away disabled children and subject them to inhumane practices. No facility that thinks it's acceptable to electroshock children can be trusted with their care. We have a list of incredible speakers today. I'm going to start by bringing up to the podium the Assembly Prime sponsor, my colleague, Assemblymember Harvey Epstein, to share some words.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you, Senator Brisport, for doing this event this morning. And I really want to thank my colleagues, Assemblymember Simon, Senator Liu, for being with us today. As Senator Brisport just said, the issues that Andres McCollins were subjected to was outrageous. I really want to thank his mother, Cheryl, for standing up with us today to make sure that something like this never happens again to another New Yorker. We can't stand by and watch vulnerable New Yorkers sent out of state to places like the Rottenberg Institute, where their procedures are illegal here. This is the last remaining facility in the country that really uses these brutal techniques. We shouldn't spend our government money to enable our government to harm other New Yorkers. There are real therapies that can assist people with disabilities to ensure that they can live fulfilling lives. We need to invest in counseling, behavioral treatment, not traumatic physical abuse. We have a better way. That's what this bill does. I want to applaud everyone for being here, and thank you for your support, and thank you, Senator Brisport, for your leadership. Let's get this bill moving. Thank you.
Next up, I'll bring up my colleague, Senator John Liu.
Thank you, Senator Brisport. I'm very happy to see all of you here today. When disability rights advocates brought this to my attention, including my friend Mike Schweinsberg here, I couldn't believe it. I thought they were talking about some movie they had seen recently about how people were being treated, children, New York children being treated. And it was really shocking to me that this could still be happening in this day and age, which is why I'm so proud that my colleague, Senator Brisport and Assemblymember Epstein, they put forth this bill. I'm certainly in full support of this and going to do everything I can to get this passed through the Senate. And I know our colleagues from the Assembly here will do so in the Assembly, and then we're going to do everything we can to get the governor to sign this bill. Let's get this done. This is like a horror movie out of the 1900s. Let's get this done. It's 2022.
Next up, I want to call up my colleague, Assemblymember Joanne Simon, who's been in this fight for a long time now.
Thank you, Senator Brisport and Assemblymember Epstein, for co-sponsoring this bill. I also want to bring people's attention to 2116, which is a bill I've carried for some time. In fact, I helped my predecessor write the original version of this bill, and that was Joan Millman, if any of you remember her. Of course we remember her, exactly. It's not that long ago. But I do want to say I'm very glad to see this attention. because I have felt often that I was like the only one in the world who was complaining about this. I'm also a member of the Disability Rights Bar Association, and a number of my colleagues have been working on this issue for years. And I do want to say it's not that so much that Rottenberg is the last place using. They are the only place that are using this technique. They invented this technique. They have been using it for decades. And for some reason, they managed to get through a court case a couple of years ago where they were really up on criminal charges for the use of these techniques. But they patented this. They patented this for a reason. And in 2006, New York State tried to expand the regulations that would allow at schools various aversive behavioral interventions, which many of us protested and were able to get some pullback on. But New York still is sending people to this place, which hardly characterizes as a school in my belief. And we really should not be doing this. We are really underwriting cruelty. And we should be, if we have folks that need certain types of education in New York State, we ought to be providing those services in New York State. So I'm very happy to work with you on this and work with you on making this happen. Thank you so much.
Next up, I want to call up the mother of Andre McCollins, Ms. Cheryl McCollins.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Senator Bridgeport. I really appreciate this. I have a question. Can anyone define criminal insanity? Take a look at the video at the Judge Rottenberg Center. Just type in Andre McCollins, JRC, and you will see criminal insanity. My son's human and civil rights were violated. I have another question. If I did this to my child, what would happen to me? Where would I be? Where would I be? How do people get a certain pass to kill? How do we support people who kill, people who hurt? My son's civil and human rights were violated, and nothing has happened. I'd be in prison. We never really got support after this situation took place, after his torture, because I went to different places and explained what happened to my son, what happened. No one believed me, because that doesn't happen these days. This was in 2001. I don't know I didn't know what they did. They're a bunch of mad scientists. And I didn't know, so I guess I wouldn't expect anyone else to know, because I couldn't believe the videotape that I saw. I thought it was a mistake. I didn't know this was a practice. Oh, why did I choose this place? Oh, they had cameras. But I didn't know the cameras were there to make sure the staff was shocking the children. For minor behaviors, as you can see, Andre refusing to take off his coat, getting out of a chair, getting out of your seat without permission. Total insanity. I urge and beg you to support Andre's law. Return the children, our New York State children, back to New York State. We don't need to send $70 million 3 states away for a facility who practices insanity. And I beg and I urge you to support this bill. Let us take that $70 million and return it to New York State, open up facilities for our children. And I ask you for your support. And I hope everyone goes home and look at the video and tell me what you think. Thank you.
Next up, I'm going to ask Mike Schweinsberg to come up. He's the president of the 504 Democratic Club, the nation's first and largest advocate for the civil rights of people with disabilities. Thank you, Mike.
Which way?
Whichever way you want.
Okay.
Okay.
Good. Go. Let me hear from me.
All right.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
This is really great stuff. Good morning. So I'm Mike Schweinsberg, president of the 504 Democratic Club, which is one of only 3 citywide clubs and the nation's first and largest advocating for the civil rights of people with disabilities. We also boast, proudly, a nonpartisan membership. We have Republicans, independents, even one member who isn't registered to vote. We're not about Democratic Party politics. We're about the civil rights of our people. So we come to this with a very heavy heart, gladdened that we are seeing progress, and we ask every legislator to make this a priority, to pass this legislation as quickly as possible, because, as Cheryl has pointed out, kids are dying. A half a dozen children have died because of this torture. The UN classifies electroshock as torture. And it's been pointed out, this is the last remaining facility. They survived a court case, unbelievably. And so this is our only remedy. Now, what do we do instead? Well, there are really fine facilities right here in New York State. The Brain Trauma Institute, I believe, in Westchester, deals with children and young adults who are nonverbal, who have severe disabilities, and they utilize therapies that are real therapies, that are therapeutic, not torture. So we encourage everyone to first get the word out. Let your viewers and your readers know that this is going on in 2022. Just doesn't make sense. And then to every legislator, work hard to pass this and start to reduce suffering and save lives. We'd appreciate it. Thank you kindly.
Next up, I'd like to call up Lydia Brown. Lydia Brown is the Director of Policy, Advocacy, and External Affairs at the Autistic Women and Non-Binary Network. Thank you, Lydia.
Thank you so much, Senator Brisport. For those of us in the autistic and broader disabled communities, we have been fighting for literally decades to end the abusive practices at the Judge Rotenberg Center, which are themselves carrying on a legacy of literal centuries of violence, abuse, and violations of bodily autonomy of disabled people in the name of treatment and in the name of help. It is not lost on the Autistic Women and Non-Binary Network in particular that the techniques that are used at the Judge Rotenberg Center have their roots in historical treatments designed to force conversion therapy on queer and trans people, and that the population at the JRC is predominantly Black and brown disabled people. Stopping the abuse at the Judge Rotenberg Center is a matter of disability justice and a matter of racial justice. It has been far too long since this country and its leadership have permitted the abuse at the JRC to occur, and ignored it even when it has come to light, with headlines like controversial treatment, that imply there is a legitimate side to the other story, that imply that it is permissible to consider certain scenarios in which disabled people can and should be subjected to torture in the name of treatment. We understand that as disabled people, we deserve to be treated with dignity, with respect, to be able to have control and ownership over our own bodies, our lives, and our choices, that we deserve to be able to exist in the world free of fear, and that we deserve support, services, and treatments that respect our human rights, our bodily integrity, and our basic dignity. It is long past time for the shocks to stop, and we must not stop there either, because this is only one fight in a centuries-long battle to achieve full rights, freedom, and justice for disabled people subjected to the violence of medical abuse and institutionalization everywhere. But it's an important one, and so I urge you to support Andre's Law and to carry forward the work that Cheryl and so many others have done for decades now, for nearly half a century, to end the abuse, to stop the violence, to stop the shocks. Thank you.
Next up, I'd like to invite Tony Alexander to the podium. Tony is the Policy and Advocacy Director for the Autistic People of Color Fund. Thank you, Tony.
So public and private institutions should not be subjecting disabled people to so much harm and torture. And unfortunately, this has been going on for far too long. Luckily, we have states and private partners that are moving away from this type of therapy, and we're moving into a new day and age. But as you can see, the fight is not over. And we need to protect New Yorkers who are experiencing this aversive therapy right now. We need to not be financially supporting this facility and putting so many people in danger. It's also not lost to me that so many Black and brown disabled people are the ones who are experiencing this pain and who are going through this torture. So let's make sure that we get Andre's Law passed. Let's stop prioritizing facilities that do not respect people's bodily autonomy and that do not take holistic approaches. And let's move this forward. Let's get our political leaders to make sure that this gets passed. Thank you.
Next up, I'd like to invite Shane Newmeyer to the podium. Shane is an attorney and advocate for intersectional disability rights. Thank you, Shane.
Thank you very much, Senator Brisport, for introducing this. I cannot overstate how important this bill will be if passed. New York State sends over 65% of JRC's students to the school. It provides millions of dollars per year to the Judge Rotenberg Center, allowing it to continue these practices. If funding was taken away from the JRC, from every New York State student, if everybody was brought back here, the Judge Rotenberg Center would be done. All 50 years worth of torture would come to an end. The Judge Rotenberg Center tells the public, tells its parents, that this is the school of last resort, that it has a zero rejection policy. It's the haven for people who have failed out of every other program. There is no other program that can serve people with these needs. How is it, though, that nearly 200 people of this population that allegedly can't be served otherwise all come from New York State? How are there only 240 people approximately that cannot be served in any other setting across the country at this point? I believe that they're wrong. I believe and this is backed up by research, that there are other programs, there are other ways of working with people with developmental, psychosocial, intellectual disabilities that do respect bodily autonomy, that don't target primarily low-income people of color to abuse and exploit. And I believe that if this bill were to be passed, it would be the beginning of a move away from torturous practices, abusive practices, so that we could address still more insidious but still abusive practices once we've seen the worst of the worst finally put aside and done away with. Thank you very much, and thank you again, Senator Brisport, for your work on this.
Next up, I'd like to invite up to the podium Chaplain Naomi Jones. Naomi works with the National Action Network. They are the Disabilities Committee Chair and also the National Crisis Team Liaison. Thank you, Naomi.
Thank you, Senator. Thank you, and good morning, everyone. I'm so proud to be here with Cheryl and all my elected officials and all of you to help address some of the issues that we are dealing with as far as health equity. There are so many of them. And I really want to make a plea for us all to come together, because we're in this together, and it's going to take every one of us, advocates, elected officials, all of us, to end the sanctuary abuse, because that's what it is. It's sanctuary abuse. And as an advocate for disability rights, I want to quote for one of the champions of this bill, the late Harriet Hines. Chaplain Hines had written to Governor Hochul in a plea for justice, and in that letter she said, quote, The safety of the special needs populations is in your hands. All it takes is the stroke of your pen to sign an executive order for the return of our New York State children. It is the hope of all of the kids and children with special needs that you take this issue front and center. Many years have lapsed with torture that still continues. Children with special needs are in desperate need of having elected officials, organizations, and individuals to advocate for them, as they do not have the ability to advocate for themselves. The National Action Network is against the National Action Network is against conversion therapy. The NAN Disabilities Committee and other units of the organization continuously work to end all forms of sanctuary abuse and advocate for civil rights for every single human being. Children and populations living with disabilities are exceptionally included in our activism and inclusion for health equity. End sanctuary abuse now. Just end it. That's what it is. It's abuse. Stop the shock. Thank you.
And I'd like to turn last to a video presentation from Sharon DeVanport. Sharon works with the Autistic Women and Non-Binary Network.
Hi, I'm Sharon DeVanport. I'm the founding executive director of the Autistic Women and Non-Binary Network. I'm grateful to have the opportunity to share a few words today about how important this bill is to AWN and to myself personally as an autistic person. Over the years, the fight to ban the shock at the JRC has taken too many tumultuous twists and turns. Every time the Stop the Shock movement makes progress and gains momentum, we're met with disappointment whenever the JRC's abuses are reinstated and allowed to continue. And they are once again granted permission to continue its torture and abuse of autistic and disabled people. AWN fully supports this new legislation. Andre's Law will functionally ban JRC from receiving funding from New York and further deny funds to place a disabled person at any New York facility that uses shock torture to control its disabled residents. Thank you so much to all of you who are here today to speak out in support of this legislation. Thank you to the Senator and to the Assembly person for supporting Andre's Law and putting your efforts forth in supporting it to see it through. The importance of Andre's Law can't be stressed enough. And I'm honored to share in community with all of you here today as we strive to lift up this bill, to give it exposure, to give it the air to breathe, to give it the momentum that we need to get it passed. To all the residents of the JRC, I want to say to you, I see you. Your community of disabled people sees you. Your lives mean so much more than what you have been led to believe when you are tortured and shocked, or even have the threat of being tortured and shocked. What's happening to you is less than human. You are a person worthy of all the best that life has to offer, and you have a community that will continue to fight for your freedom from the torture that you are currently forced to endure. Thank you again to everyone who is here, who is supporting Andre's Law. And I appreciate, again, being able to have the opportunity to share a few words today at this press conference.
I'd like to thank everyone who was part of today for a range of testimonials, many of them very emotional. And thank you everyone who attended and for believing in this bill and believing we can get it done before the end of session on June 2nd. I know we can. It's going to take all of us fighting together in order to bring justice to our state's youth, especially our disabled or neurodivergent youth. and let's all stay in the fight together. Appreciate you all. Thank you also for coming.